Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us. I'm Jeremiah Dobrik. I'm the breaking news editor here at the Long Beach Post. We've been doing these daily live stream chats with people in Long Beach about how the pandemic is affecting them and every part of daily life. Today, I'm joined by the co-host, Mike Gardspacio, and we are talking to the outgoing superintendent of Long Beach Unified School District, Chris Steinhauser, and we are also joined by Jill Baker, who is the incoming superintendent of the Long Beach Unified School District. So they are ready to field all your questions. Thanks for joining us, both of you.
Thank you.
And if you have questions for them about school, what school's going to look like in the future, what's going on right now, please comment on our Facebook or our Twitter, where these are streaming live. But we're going to jump right in, really. And I think, Mike, I'm sure you agree with this, but the number one question we've been getting from people, and I bet the number one question that Jill and Chris have been getting is, what is the future going to look like for school? Are you guys moving toward having in-person classes resume for the fall, and what could that look like?
Well, this is Chris. I'll let Jill start and then I'll add on. So, because she's really been working on the future plans for the fall.
Sure. So we are hard at work first closing the school year, which has some intricacies involved in it, even for distribution of materials and collection of things from students and allowing students back into the buildings to get their personal items. But behind the scenes, a lot of very strategic work that we are doing in anticipation of getting back to school. So everything I can share today is dependent on our health department and our governor releasing us to get back into school buildings. But we are actively and aiming to bring as many students back into school buildings next year as we can. That will involve a lot of detail. For example, our current the current information we have is that students will have to be socially distanced in classrooms. So we have business department staff, along with principal supervisors and principals and teachers, out looking at what that actually looks like in a classroom. And we have task forces that are about to increase by size with participation with our associations, our Teachers Association, our Managers Association, our Classified Employees Association, and at some point, parents and students that will come into the conversation to really think about what implementation of staying at a distance in a classroom will actually look and feel like. I guess I'll add, as we think about getting to September 1st and the reopening of school, we also are planning for lots of learning experiences this summer at a distance. So we'll have a K-12 program running that looks different by level, getting every student who we can into smaller groups with some supplemental resources for learning recoupment that the superintendent has set aside to ensure that our students have as much access and catch-up time as possible, even while we're at a distance.
If I can, I think Jeremiah has gotten this question a million ways. I've gotten the question a million ways too. So we definitely want to talk quite a bit about the fall. And I'd like to ask a couple questions about some different scenarios it could look like. And I know we want to talk about the budget and the funding for how that stuff's going to happen and the challenges you guys are facing, because I think the community needs to be aware of what the process is of getting to all these different outlooks, right? So my first question is, in looking through the CDC guidelines, and I know hopefully there's going to be, more state and county guidelines about what the fall could look like in person coming out soon. There's a variety of things on there, right? I mean, there's physically distancing kids in the classrooms. There's the plastic shields around the desks. There's all these different things. Have you guys started eliminating possibilities and whittling it down to this is what we think these 3 or 4 things could look like? Or is it still kind of all on the table and working your way down to figuring out what it'll look like?
Yeah, I mean, we're in a phase in the district now of really trying to not think about that we can avoid COVID, but how to manage in a COVID environment. So we have a number of protocols that have been established that include signage in all of our buildings, with many staff actually returning to work to help close the school year next week. And that includes a lot of universal precautions, and following what the health department has advised us are the best ways to prevent spread. Frequent hand washing, use of 60% or more alcohol sanitizer, hand sanitizer, not necessarily wearing a mask if you're not in close proximity to people, but having that available if staff wants to wear a mask. We have determined that with those universal precautions that we think right now, that is what we will be doing. We have heard from the health department that we should expect that students may be wearing face coverings when we come back, and that will continue to assess and reassess during summer as the medical information changes for us.
I'm sorry, I would just add, it's about choice too, because we know parents have many different opinions. So we've already been notified by some parents who want a virtual program. And getting to what Dr. Baker just said about masks, if students are to wear a mask and they're required to, for example, that comes with a cost of about $6 million if you were to provide every student in this district a mask every day. So all these things we have to put together as we plan for the future.
It's a good thing you've got a huge budget surplus that you're sitting on, right?
Right.
Before we jump to the budget, can I ask one clarifying question though? You mentioned in your first answer, school starting September 1st, I think, and I know the governor may have caused some confusion a while back when he talked about possibly moving school start dates. Has that been settled in the district? You guys will start fall on your normal start date?
Yeah, actually that announcement didn't change anything for us. We had determined that start date. Let me build on something that Chris shared just a moment ago too. We are looking at multiple options for online learning, and to be really specific, when we had to pivot from March 13th and in 1 week launch home learning opportunities that turned into longer distance learning experiences for students, we didn't have the time to do what we would normally do in terms of the quality of what we expect in Long Beach Unified School District. We did our very best, and our teachers have done amazing work doing their very best. The time since then has given us time to explore different learning platforms, different ways of having distance learning for accelerated students, for thinking about blending between some students may take some classes on a campus, have dual enrollment at Long Beach City College. And so what we hope to have are many options that really help a family to think about what's best, as Chris said, what's best for their family, and make the decision based on that.
So if someone doesn't feel comfortable coming to school in the fall, if maybe they have a medical condition, maybe they have a family member with a medical condition, there's going to be contingencies in place where they wouldn't necessarily have to come to the classroom.
That's right. That's right.
You guys mentioned the people who wouldn't be comfortable coming to school. What I've heard, in my own family, as well as from a number of our readers, is sort of the opposite, right? Families where I know in my son's first grade class, quite a few of those kids are home alone all day because their parents are already back at work, right? And so what we're getting a lot of is, I had a conversation last week with the TALB executive director, and he said, teachers never like to be called babysitters, but it is a fact that part of the social contract for being alive in America is that, there's a place you can send your kids to when you have to go work. Given that it looks like everyone's going to be, hopefully back to work here in the next month or two, how much are you guys kind of feeling that pressure from the community? I know Councilwoman Susie Price, wrote a letter into the board last night. How much are you guys feeling that pressure, though, to make sure that there is a physical component that'll allow kids to get onto campus and parents to be at work without, worrying about it?
Well, Mike, I would say we're getting the pressure on all sides. So there are parents who, exactly what you just said, I want my child there 5 days a week and so on. There are other parents who are saying, I don't want my son or daughter there till there's a vaccine, and people in between. And so we always have to do what the public health officials guide us to do. And that's why what Dr. Baker said, we're going to have this whole matrix of opportunities for folks.
But if I'm reading what you're saying correctly, and I know you don't have the crystal ball to say this is what it's going to look like on September. So I'm reading you correctly. What you guys are imagining is a mix where if Jeremiah's son, he's not comfortable having him at school, there's a curriculum in place that's graded and that's more of a regular curriculum that he can do from home. And if my wife and I are ready to throw our kid out the window, maybe he's going to first grade 2 days a week, 3 days a week, 5 days a week. And that you guys are going to use the next 3 or 4 months to try and figure out how to do all that simultaneously. Is that roughly accurate?
Yeah, that's what we're planning for. And I think the other motivating factor is what we know, that put K-12 students, different than college students, are part of what gets the economy going again. And so if there's any other pressure that we feel, it's the same pressure that everybody else feels to support the economy getting going.
Do you have any idea of a timeline when parents might get a sense of what those options are and when they might have the opportunity to opt in or out? Some of the questions we're getting on our Facebook and Twitter right now is, when will I even know what the plans are? That people seem to understand that, yes, you guys are still in the process of making the plans, but when might I actually have a glimpse of details of those plans?
Yeah, so actually we released this afternoon or a little earlier today a message to staff, helping them to process what we're working on and let them know that they are not individually responsible for coming up with classroom plans, and to let them know that we have task forces that are working on plans. That will follow with a community message either tomorrow or early next week, so that the community gets an idea of what we're working on. And then I think currently our plan is regular updates to the community with no exact promise, because we've got to watch the phases happen from in our county and from Dr. Davis and the local health department to know as we move from phase to phase. But I'm personally committed to, within every couple of weeks, letting the community know where we are in the planning process, and as more information becomes available, then we will provide that for the community.
And was there
I've gotten 3 hallelujah text messages already from people who we're feeling more pessimistic about the chance that there would be in-person options. So I think that's already good news for a lot of people. As Chris said, you guys are hearing that from all directions. What I really wanted to ask you about is the story I've been kind of covering for the Post in an ongoing way is, you guys are going to have a 10% budget reduction this year, and likely, probably tougher than that for the following year from what I've heard you guys talking about. Every single option that the governor has talked about, that the public health officials have talked about for bringing kids back to school, and every option for doing something digitally is going to cost more money and not less money. So how do you attempt to reconcile those things? And I would ask, I guess, a 2-part question. What's being done to try and get more budget for you guys? And number 2, if someone in the community is looking to help with that, is there anything that's public facing for them to contribute to?
Sure, I'll start, and Jill, you can add. So as you well said, Mike, we're going to lose about $70 million next year, which is really $210 million over the next 3 years. We are going to get some one-time money to help mitigate some things, but the cut of 70 million is going to be a cut of 70 million every year for the next 3 years, with right now a zero COLA. So right now we have some really healthy reserves that will get us through the next years, but it's devastating. So we are advocating at the state level, but we'll be using this money to help pay for some of the summer learning activities that we're going to do. We're very fortunate right now. We have one-to-one devices for every kid in the district. We have Wi-Fi, so we're ahead of the game on that. But just like I talked about masks, that's a $6 million tag if we're required to have masks for every kid, just for 1 year. So it is critical because we're going to have new learning management issues, but I'm not going to sugarcoat this. We're cutting as we speak. We've already cut over $10 million. I'm working with Dr. Baker and others. It's really serious that everyone advocate, especially in Washington right now, to help give districts money to help support all these issues that we're talking about.
Is that the issue? Obviously the state revenue is down. Is the issue from your perspective that you should be getting more money from the federal government in relief than you're receiving right now?
Absolutely. So in the Great Recession, which was over a 3-year period, we received $108 million under the American Recovery Act. Right now, we're going to receive about $20 million. The cut that we just took this year is greater than the biggest cut I took in the Great Recession. So that just shows you the magnitude. And you're exactly right. This isn't going to be the worst year. 21, 22 will be the worst year.
think that actually speaks to one of the big concerns we've been getting in our comments is that how is the school district going to manage the ongoing social needs, special needs, IEP needs for students, especially as things are being cut, and there are going to be so many different places these students are in, whether it's some are going to be online, some are going to be on campus. Are those going to be on the chopping block? How are you going to make sure that these kids have the counseling they need, the support they need, or whether it's special services through their IEP?
Dr. Baker, you want to start with that, and I'll go after you.
Sure. I mean, I have repeatedly said to our community that we are in the best place at the worst time. The significance of that is not that we aren't going to take big cuts in the future. The significance of that is many districts don't have any time to make their plans. They're just going to have to slash things to get through. And because of Chris's leadership and the good management practices in our business office, we have some time to make informed decisions, to engage a budget advisory committee, and to reprioritize what we can do with the funds that we have, with some hope that we get some money from the federal government to plug some of the holes. As Chris said, as soon as we got stabilized after the school closure and got teachers connected with students, we went into cut mode. And Chris is a master, has taught me a lot, and is super active in that process of really looking at those shifts and things that we can shift expenses to save general fund money. But at some point in the fall, we will be looking at programs, and our board and cabinet staff, along with a budget advisory committee, will be providing inputs around reductions. And so, yeah, we're not going to be able to avoid that, but we'll do it in the most prioritized way with our equity agenda in mind, and knowing that we've got to look at resources for our highest need students. And that speaks to what you asked, Jeremiah, about social emotional needs too. We have a lot of students that are experiencing increased trauma while they're staying at home right now. And it will be incumbent on us to figure out ways with community partners and with our own resources to stabilize and to help students heal from the experience they've had during school closure.
And I would just add what Jill said about community partners. What makes Long Beach unique and blessed are the literally hundreds of partners that we have, the guidance centers, assistance league, we could just go on all day. And that's what's going to help us. They've helped us in the past, and they will continue to help us in the future.
This is a little bit more of a process question, but I always feel as a journalist, one of my jobs is kind of to let people know who to be angry at, right? And I think you guys are probably hearing from a lot of people who, I want this, I want this. And one thing I just wanted to ask about is, as I understand it, you guys are sort of at the bottom of a very large funnel in terms of the way the decision-making process is going to go on this, right? There's national guidelines from the CDC and the Department of Education. There's the state and the state's Department of Education, as well as the state public health officials. Then that trickles down to county officials and county public health officials. Then the city also has its own health department. How difficult is it navigating, first of all, trying to figure out what you're going to do, 4 months from now, 3 months from now, when there's all of these layers of jurisdiction that are sort of restrictive as they go down, sitting on top of you guys?
Well, I would say, and you've explained it beautifully. But we're blessed again to have such a great connection with our health department. Dr. Baker and Dr. Brown meet with them on a regular basis. So that is a really good thing. So we don't have to miss some steps in the process. The most frustrating piece is the guidance from the state level, because we have not received clear guidance yet. And we do know that things change over time. So having the partnership that we have with our own health department is really beneficial to our school system so that we can move forward with some certainty of what's going to happen.
And that's important also, back to something that I said about managing through COVID. We will not be able to avoid COVID. So that partnership and having Dr. Davis and Kelly Colopy and the team is really just an important aspect of the work going forward. And they will be a part of our decision, of course, and the advisement of how we do things at school.
Can I just ask one really quick follow-up there, Jeremiah? So Is it because I think everyone around Southern California and the state are wondering about whether there will be in-class, in-person class in the fall. Is that relationship with the public health department in Long Beach why it sounds like you guys maybe have a little bit more certainty than some that there will be an in-person component?
No, I would say, Mike, that even the state is talking about in class, but the difference is what can the individual district do? So for example, it goes back to their fiscal picture. If they can't handle adding more people or even the social distancing, they may not have the buildings to do so. Because there are going to be some schools that will not be able to bring back students because they don't have the buildings to put students in. It's more of a local issue on that part.
Is that something you guys feel confident in, though, that you have the space? So, like, if you bring back, I mean, I don't know, if you bring back a majority of students for in-person classes, do you have the space to socially or physically distance them? And how do you enforce that? I'm trying to imagine, I have a 4-year-old and a 6-year-old, and I'm trying to imagine explaining to them, you need to stay 6 feet away from your friend in class.
Jeremiah and I are not successfully socially distancing our 4- and 6-year-olds in our house.
So, I mean, we're exploring other spaces that we could use. And I guess just to be really upfront, we won't be able to bring every student back at the same time on the same schedule into classrooms. So what does that mean? Well, we'll have some families that will want a robust online graded distance learning program. One that they haven't, the kind of thing that they haven't seen yet this year. We're looking at scheduling, we're looking at how to maximize on a campus where there are enough classrooms to spread students out and to utilize adults who are licensed to be in classrooms with students other than just the teacher, where we might broadcast from one classroom to another classroom. So, I mean, we're having to think of things that 3 months ago weren't even a concept of what we might use in the district. So
can I ask a little bit about the online learning component too? And I know the fall online learning is probably going to look a lot different than what you guys did this year because you have more time to prepare for it. But can you talk to me about how this section of online learning has gone, how engaged students have been, whether you have a sense of whether kids are actually doing the work, and maybe what you guys have learned from that?
Yeah, so I mean, I'll say that we've had a lot of variation. Teachers have had flexibility, thinking about their personal skill set and how they're able to use their personal skill set. So for some teachers, it was a quick transition to teaching from behind a computer. They would get a whiteboard out, teach a lesson right in front of students. Others were less comfortable in that environment. Lots of professional development has been offered and participated in by our teachers. So I think that their capacity has dramatically increased for most of them over the last few months. But the experience has been different, and that's what we're hearing from families and from teachers themselves. We did have our first opportunity to it's not real attendance, but check in on students. We had above 90% of our students connected to a teacher in that first week. And that, has kind of gone up and down over the last several weeks with, a range, I'd say, between 70% connecting every week up to above 90%.
And I would just, go ahead, Mike.
I was just going to say, I think I read a story that, the LAUSD, that number was more like 50%. I mean, none of us know what a good attendance rate is for online learning because it's never existed before. But is that a number that you guys generally are satisfied with? I mean, is that pretty good in your estimation of where it could have been, I guess?
Well, I think our satisfaction, we want 100% of our kids engaged all the time. But the issue is we know that for a variety of reasons, some aren't. It could be a health issue, their parents, all kinds of stuff. But I do know that our teachers have done a great job of reaching out to kids on a regular basis. And some people, like Jill said, are reporting 90 to 95% every day. Others are saying what you're saying, 50%. And so I know from my daughter's perspective, she does ETK, and she has 16 students. She's averaging 12 a day. Not always the same 12, but 12 a day.
I'm assuming, if as we go back in the fall, like you said, we're not going to get away from COVID. I'm assuming there's always going to be the possibility of a second wave of the disease. I think everybody's assuming that. So does that mean every teacher, every class is going to have an online learning backup plan, and they're going to be expected to be a high quality graded program.
Yes, yes, it does expect that, because the situation that we'll be in next year is also that we may have to at some time close an individual school instead of closing the entire district. And so we're doing all kinds of planning to think about operationally, what are the protocols for that. Much of that has been established with the staff that are still working in terms of notification and prevention, but we don't have schools open. So once we have students in schools, we will be ready for an enhanced protocol for how to respond to that. And at any time that we close a school, we'll want students to leave with their Chromebook and their materials so that they can be at home and then in a distance learning environment, even if that's short term.
If I could then, I mean, obviously, as we said, everyone's been asking about the fall. It sounds like the things you guys are confident about are unlike the spring online learning opportunities, where, as you said, you guys had a week to put those together. In the fall, whether it is 100% in person, 100% online, or 50-50, everything will be graded. The graduation standards, I believe, are going back up for high school, right?
Right.
So in your guys' opinion, the fall is really more of a return to kind of what you've normally done, just some of it's going to be online.
It's closer to what has been known as school.
Okay.
Yeah.
But you know, and I just want to
challenges that exist, and those challenges, you know, not every student has connectivity, not every student. So with new challenges and less money.
Right, and we have Wi-Fi for our students now. Everyone has a device. We'll continue that for the next year. But I just want to say this is a great opportunity to do some very innovative, exciting new things. Think about the high school student who needs to help to go to work to support their family. Under the traditional way, he couldn't do that. He or she could do that now. I mean, and with our partners at Long Beach State and Long Beach City, we are uniquely positioned to be the best system in the state on how to do this new work. So, and I'm just going to add one thing, because I know we're closer at the time. You know, I've been here for 56 years in this district in some form or another, and I'm obviously very biased because I think it's a great place. I am so excited about the future of this district with Dr. Baker leading it and her team, from a grandparent's perspective, because I'll have grandkids coming in soon, because there's no other system, in my opinion, on all aspects, from the board down to all of our 10,000 employees, who are well positioned to move this ship forward into the next journey. So
I think that's actually probably a good place to end it. We're right up against our deadline. So I just wanted to say thank you both for joining us. Hopefully that gave parents a lot more info about what may be coming in the future. And I'm sure there will be more and more information coming out, and hopefully we can have you both back, one or both of you back sometime in the future too. And to everybody watching, thank you for your questions. We got so many questions. It's obvious there's a lot of hunger for this information out there. Sorry if we couldn't get to yours. We'll be back tomorrow with another live stream at 1:30, but later today at 3:30, this actually might be interesting if any of the students and parents watching. One of our reporters, Valerie Ogier, is going to be doing a Minecraft live stream and answering your questions about journalism and about how we operate here. So once again, thank you both for joining us, and we'll see you soon.
take care. Thank you.
Yeah.